Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was one of the good ones. What I mean by one of the good ones, I mean that he is shown in this light as almost transcending his color, as not being like those others, not being like Malcolm X and believing in violence. No, he's supposed to be shown as different. They try to show him as essentially white. They try to tokenize him. They muddle him down to one single line. Are we showing just how wrong this idea that he's honestly this idea that he is some loved person that was loved in his time and he was not. I'm going to be trying to dismantle lots of the claims and the reasonings that many people, the ways that people will coerce his language into suiting their own needs, and he would not have supported it in his life. First of all, his most famous line from the I Have a Dream speech about judging people based on the content of their character. It's used a lot to try and strike down affirmative action. That is not what he would have supported. It's about equity, not about post-racism, because we're not in post-racism as well. We still have to essentially judge people for their skin. Not really judge, just help them based on their skin. Because people need it. Because it's being proven that we still need it. Black people are being hired less often. It's not even necessarily people's conscious choice. It could be a subconscious thing. They just hire black people less, black and brown people less. And also the line that love drives out hate. You need to fight. You don't fight hate with hate. You fight hate with love. That is also being used in a coercive way. They're trying to say this about protesters when they're actually doing that. They're actually trying to drive out hate with love. But it's being coerced and it's being changed into a way to suit their own needs. Because they see him as like one of the only black activists who they agree with. They don't say anything about Hampton. They don't say anything good about Malcolm or Angela or Shauna. They say nothing about these people. Nothing at all. Nothing good, at least. He even, in his time, denoted white liberals and moderates. Yes, Martin Luther King Jr. himself said how he does not like moderates because, for example, how do you become moderate when it comes to the KKK? What is the middle ground? The middle ground is still hate. They're prioritizing order over peace, order over justice. He said it himself perfectly. We do not need allies more devoted to order than to justice. You can't just preach it, you have to practice it. You can't just say you want love and justice. You have to actually practice it, not just say you're for the cause, be for the cause. Do something for the cause and support it. He also was anti-Vietnam. He was he was someone who was avidly against the war in Vietnam. But we don't really hear about this because it doesn't really jive with this idea we have of him. Because he's not really a person in most people's eyes. He's just kind of a symbol. He's honestly just kind of he's a character. He's an object. He's not something to be learned from. He's just someone who had one singular line, and that is it now for the rest of time. And we try to give this idea that people loved him. He was considered the most hated man in the entire country. The FBI chief called him the most notorious liar in the country. He was one of, if not maybe the most hated men in the entire country. 75% of the population hated him. He's more hated than Trump is. He was not liked in his time because for the times he was not moderate. He was very radical. Radical people can promote radical change most often. And when we think of radical change, you might often think of violence. And he does not condone that, but it's not the way people think. He doesn't see it as well as very practical for black people. Not only is it impractical, it's also immoral, but especially impractical. He doesn't believe it'll actually inspire much long-term change. That's one of his biggest gripes against it. It is that it won't actually fix things in the long run. It'll give white people the sense that they are being attacked, that their actions can be excused because, oh, this side, they did something. It's just like the civil rights movement. It's just like the protests and BLM protests. They say that we're violent, so that then they can shift the blame. They shift the blame away from themselves so they can feel good about themselves. They call it riots. And he also speaks on riots, saying that the riots, they're the voice of the unheard. Now, this does not mean that he's calling for riots. He's saying that if you do not give people their rights, if you don't give them their human liberties, this is what inevitably will happen. He's not saying it's good, but he's just saying, if you don't give us rights, someone eventually will try and take it into their own hands and do this. I can see a lot of parallels between this line here and what Tupac Shakur said about how with the civil rights movement we were peaceful, trying to say, please give us food, please give us food. They've not been getting food, so now it's like, hey, we're standing out there for weeks, can we get some food? We're starting to starve. And then after a few weeks, they're just busting in the doors because they're hungry, because we're hungry, because we need food. We're not being given it until riots eventually happen, until they go Nat Turner 1831 up on these motherfuckers. One of the biggest mischaracteristics of him as well, I believe, is how he's almost shown as like a model minority. As I said in the title, he's one of the good ones. He's one of the few black people. He's one of the black people who can be sanitized and shown to white audiences and have them love him now. Especially how they show him in relation to Malcolm X, trying to say Malcolm was this crazy person that did nothing good. When I was younger, I thought Malcolm did nothing good. I thought he was all bad, just a dumb human being. Now I've realized just how genius he is, and just how good of what he said is. They are two sides of the same coin. Malcolm is the fire in our hearts. He is the fight, the will for change, and after being oppressed for so long, the want to just knock some heads. But Martin, he's the desire for solidarity and peace within us. He's the one that tells us, no, we can't attack them. We can't do what they do to us. We need to rise above and get long-lasting change. It's likely why I, as someone who's younger, follows a lot more of what Malcolm talks about. I'm still young. I still have that fire deep within me, wanting that change, wanting that radical change. How are you supposed to live with not having rights? How are you supposed to live with racial profiling and slavery? How are you supposed to live with these things? I believe I've shown how we need to change our perception of Martin Luther King Jr. as well as Malcolm X to a lesser extent. But just to do your research before coercing his words for your own gain. Stop taking what he says out of context to try and mean whatever you want, to have it fit whatever your agenda is. He likely would not support it. He supported such radical affirmative action that even now would be considered radical. He called for reparations of about $50 billion in the 60s. And we're going to say he would not have wanted reparations. We're going to say he would not have wanted affirmative action. Many people today say that if Martin Luther King Jr. was alive today, he would be so disappointed in us. I think he would be, but not for the reasons they say. He would be not necessarily disappointed. He would be angry, and as well as disappointed. He'd be angry that we haven't changed. He'd be angry that it's just the exact same as it was 60 years ago. He would be angry that he and others had to die in vain because they won't let us change things. He would be angry that we're still living in a nation today where people are judged based on the color of their skin.